No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe in revelation. I mean, the point here is that let's assume I'm wrong, Richard. I'm wrong.
Let's
assume I'm wrong.
And do you teach them that apostates should be punished?
You may not share that, but that is my religion. That is the way I've been brought up, and I bring that child into this world. I educate him. I give him everything. It's my right to make sure that I bring him, and I take issue with that. You think that it's wicked? Well, that's your point of view. I know that's going to make him a better human being. And what's missing is when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's an important point that you don't want to discuss.
What is the penalty for
apostasy? And that is the thing that you fail to discuss, and that's why you've got those prejudicial views about faith.
What is the penalty for apostasy? What do you teach the children will happen to them if they give up the Muslim faith?
In the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attacks, we're in the midst of a big debate, really, aren't we, about the relationship between religious fundamentalists and the rest of society. It was interesting that the former Archbishop of Canterbury on Newsnight last week said, the debate isn't really one between Christians and Muslims, it's more between the secular society and Muslims, which I thought was an interesting observation.
Yes.
But what do you think the rules of the game should be in a modern liberal democracy? Between these different groups who have very, very different belief systems?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a very profoundly important question. I think the rules of the game are that you should be allowed to believe anything you like, and of course that's right, but that you shouldn't impose your beliefs on other people. And so any creed that thinks it has the right to say, not only do we believe this, but you've got to believe it too, or else, I mean, that is a very, very serious violation of everything that democracy stands for.
So let's take some examples. Burqa bans, they have a burqa ban in France. You wouldn't be in favour of that?
No, I'm not in favour of a burqa ban. It seems to me to be a violation of individual liberty. I mean, when I see a woman in a full burqa with just a slit, I feel personally offended. But it's an important part of what I believe, that what I feel personally is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what I feel. Nobody else should abide by what I feel. And that applies, of course, on the other side as well.
What about religious schools? So a community sets up a school, maybe pays for it itself, that doesn't subscribe to your views of education that you've set out today. And now, is that a freedom of speech thing for them to be able to teach what they want or not?
That's very difficult, because there we're trespassing on the tussle between the freedom of speech of parents to impose their views on children and the freedom of children to be educated without having erroneous views. And we now know that in some cases it definitely is erroneous. This is not a matter of opinion imposed upon them.
But you're not against teaching history and things like that
in
a
no.
constructive way?
I'm very keen on teaching history, teaching literature, very keen on teaching religion, as a matter of fact. I mean, teaching about religion, not indoctrinating in any particular religion, because that would go right against the spirit of critical thinking.
It's a tricky one, though, isn't it? Because you can't build a society on the basis that you know you're right and you know that other people are wrong, can you? Because the liberal society is, we don't have to make that decision.
No, that's right.
You can decide what you think, and you decide what you think, but you are really saying that they have to teach, children have to be taught in your creed.
Well, there is a difference. I mean, let me use the example you just used of the burqa ban. That's a matter of opinion, and there the society, it seems to me, has no right to impose on other people. Evolution is not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact. The evidence is as overwhelming as in the case of, that the Earth orbits the Sun. That's not up for dispute.
You are in the camp as, really are probably associated as being one of the most, and I think the disparaging phrase is militant atheists in the world, probably. What do you think of that phrase? What do you think of that accusation? And do you, if you like, revel in that place, or do you hate it when people try and, if you like, put you in the same category as fanatics on other sides of the religious divide?
Well, fanatics, religious fanatics are apt to take the law into their own hands on occasion, aren't they? And actually threaten people, actually use physical violence.
But you choose to go onto Twitter. It's not a venue for scientific debate. You choose to go on Twitter. Just to take one example, a tweet in which you drew a very invidious comparison between the number of Nobel Prizes won by people from Trinity College, Cambridge, and the entire Muslim population of the world. Trinity College, Cambridge comes out on top of that comparison. Now, not disputing the factual basis of it, why make such an invidious comparison? Why raise that? Why raise the issue? What's the point of drawing attention to that?
It is a fact that in the Dark Ages and Middle Ages, the Islamic world was a beacon of scientific progress and enlightenment. And something has gone wrong. I had dinner with the then chief rabbi, Jonathan Sacks, a few months ago, and learned there the astonishing fact that between 20 and 25% of all scientific Nobel Prizes have been won by Jews. And I thought that was a stunning fact. It really is. I mean, when you think the total population of Jews in the world is tiny compared to really any other of the major religions. So I wanted to make this point that Islam has stagnated in the scientific field since the Middle Ages, and the best comparison to make would have been with Jews. And then I thought, oh no, I can't do that, because that will really upset people because of Palestine, and I'm very sympathetic to the plight of the Palestinian people in Israel. So at the last minute, I crossed out Jews and stuck in Trinity College, Cambridge.
But I can think of much more gentlemanly ways of making the intellectual point that Islam has not been a great scientific contributor.
It's just a fact. Whether or not it upsets people is less important to me than the dramatic nature of the fact, which ought to be looked at. Somebody ought to be saying, why?
But you would agree that you pick an argument with people of religion or religions, don't you?
Pick an argument suggests
you
going
go out of your way to say things that are pointed
that.
about that religion or those groups of people.
It's a good point that the best way to convert people is not necessarily to tell them they're idiots. And I have occasionally seemed guilty of that. For example, I once wrote in the New York Times that anyone who doesn't believe in evolution is either ignorant, stupid, or insane. Now that sounds like an extreme point of view. It's actually a factual point of view because the word ignorant is not a disparaging word. I'm ignorant of all sorts of things, and so are you, I'm sure. And we would be quite happy to own up to being ignorant of many things, ignorant of music or ignorant of art or ignorant of baseball, whatever it might be.
I think a lot of moderate religious people are very turned off by your discourse.
Well, some may be, and that may be my political error. There are
tactical error in terms of, because your job, you see your role as trying to convert the world to your point of view. I think. I mean, that's
I see my role as trying to persuade people to think for themselves and look at evidence. I mean, if they come round to my point of view as a result of looking at evidence, then so much the better.
Have you ever been wrong about anything important?
Oh yeah.
Give me an example.
What? Well, I'd have to go into sort of rather recondite scientific matters, but I've been wrong on scientific questions and have said so. Scientists actually rather like being wrong. It's unlike politicians; they get a sort of kudos from admitting that they're wrong, because that's how science proceeds.
Richard Dawkins, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Islam deserves criticism because it does not stay as a private belief. In its strictest forms, it pushes submission, obedience, gender control, censorship, and punishment for doubt. That is dangerous in any free society. Dawkins is right to call out the problem. Once a religion claims it has the final truth from God, questioning becomes a threat instead of a normal part of learning. Science moves forward by doubt. Democracy survives through debate. Islam, especially fundamentalist Islam, often demands surrender before evidence. That is not freedom. That is control wrapped in holy language. And this criticism should be direct. A belief system that limits speech, controls women, scares children with hell, and punishes people for leaving deserves to be challenged openly. You can respect individual Muslims while still saying the ideology itself causes real harm.
As Muslims, we have a right to bring up our children in accordance with our beliefs, which have served us over the centuries well. Now, I give you the same right to bring up your children in
What
the way
about
that
the
you
rights of
want.
the children themselves?
Well, the rights of the children come when they are they're old enough to understand the issues. Until they get to that age, it's the parents' responsibility and
do
duty.
you teach them that
You may not
apostates
share
should be
that.
punished?
You may not share that, but that is my religion. That is the way I've been brought up, and I bring that child into this world. I educate him. I give him everything. It's my right to make sure that I bring him, and I take issue with that. You think that it's wicked? Well, that's your point of view. I know that's going to make him a better human being. And what's missing is when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's an important point that you don't want to discuss.
What is the penalty for
apostasy? And that is the thing that you fail to discuss, and that's why you've got those prejudicial views about faith.
What is the penalty for apostasy? What do you teach the children will happen to them if they give up the Muslim faith?
Well, let's bring the debate back into Britain.
What is the penalty for
talking about-
apostasy?
I tell you what we will do, because we could go down this road for a very long way, and it's obviously very important. Maryam Namazi was born in Iran before her family left in the wake of the Islamic revolution. You are part of the British Council of Ex-Muslims. I presume that you believe religious principles are not entirely helpful to developing moral values.
No, I actually think that oftentimes religious principles are actually quite immoral, to be quite frank. And I think that if you look at examples where girls are sexualized at a very young age, for example, if you look at Islamic schools where they're forced to veil, where they're taught that they're different from boys, where they're not allowed to listen to music, where they're completely segregated, and many such examples like that. I think, in fact, if there is any good morality that comes out of even religious education, it's not because of religion. It's oftentimes despite religion, and it's the result of an enlightenment and a vast social movement for 21st century values that have had an effect on religion as well.
Let me bring in, I will come to you in a moment. Let me bring in Mohammed Muqaddam in response to that. I don't want to misreport, but at Muslim schools, the girls are put into a position where they are diminished as human beings.
Well, that's often the case where people are ignorant of what goes on in faith schools and Muslim schools. The fact is, our schools are run along legal lines. They treat both sexes equally, provide them the best opportunities. So it's often a case of people who have prejudices and ignorance.
Maryam?
I mean, I think it's typical of Islamic schools and the political Islamic movement to label any criticism a sort of prejudice and thereby racism, thereby trying to make people silent on criticizing it. I think the issues are very clear. I mean, the head of the Islamia school, for example, was quoted in an interview saying that you're born a Muslim, you're always Muslim, you can't leave. And that's things that have been told to me untold times for having renounced religion and Islam. There is threats, there is intimidations. Just yesterday, a 16-year-old girl was killed by her father for refusing to wear the veil. I think Islamic schools very much do suppress and restrict girls.
Richard Dawkins, from your perspective, presumably you wouldn't be entirely opposed at all to the idea.
I would be thoroughly in favour of education in the Bible as literature. You can't understand English literature without the Bible. You can't take your allusions. And that's an aspect of what the bishop was saying. Is absolutely right. This is a Christian country. Historically, it's a Christian country. You can't understand English history or English literature without a knowledge of the Bible. And by the way, I think I should say that the act of collective worship, I don't approve of it, but nevertheless, the Christian religion, especially I think the Anglican religion, is benign by comparison. If a child at the end of its school career wants to give up religion, the church will quite happily say, okay, go your own way. The penalty for apostasy in the Christian religion is not death. There is no penalty for apostasy at all in the Christian religion. The Christian religion is comparatively benign, and we should respect it as such.
Richard Dawkins, does a God-shaped perspective or set of values do any harm to the way in which children should be taught at schools right now?
Thou shalt have no other God before me, thou shalt make no graven image, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy. What on earth's that got to do with anything to do with morals? That's the 10 Commandments, or at least 3 of them. It would be deeply depressing if the only way children could get moral values was from religion, either from Scripture, and God knows we don't want them to get it from Scripture, I mean, just look at Scripture, or from God, being intimidated by God. Anybody who is good for only those two reasons is not really being good at all. Why not teach children things like the golden rule, do as you would be done by? How would you like it if other children did that to you? So why do you do it to them?
So God is not only irrelevant, God is damaging.
I didn't say God was damaging, but I think it's depressing that anybody should suggest that you actually need God in order to be moral. I would hope that our morals come from a better source than that, and that therefore they are genuinely moral rather than based on outmoded scripture or based on fear.
Professor Dawkins said, if a child is born into a family given a certain religion, when that child growing up basically knows more about their religion, and as they grow up they learn about other religions and choose, and they can...
Are you saying that the fact that you're brought up within a religious faith doesn't prevent you being open-minded or adopting any religion or none?
Not at all. It does not prevent me from being open to other religions. I, in fact, have come to this country and chose to put the veil on. I have come to this country without a veil on.
So not so very wicked is the view.
But what is the penalty for apostasy? What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Mukadam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And before...
We keep coming down this apostasy.
Well,
give us a quick answer on what is the penalty for apostasy.
You very well know, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostrophe is dealt with the death penalty.
Thank you. That's all I want to hear.
But what's the relevance between what happens in an Islamic country and Great Britain? I fail to see the connection.
Okay. I'm going to bring some more voice.
The parent says, "It's my right to raise my child in my religion." But that is exactly the problem. A child is not a religious possession. A child deserves room to grow, question, and think before being told fear is love and obedience is morality. This is where religion loses the argument. The 10 Commandments open with demands for worship, not human kindness. Islam has an even harsher problem when leaving the faith can be treated as a crime. That is not moral guidance. That is control. Real morality does not need threats from heaven. It comes from empathy, honesty, and caring about what happens to other people.
Scientist Richard Dawkins spent years attacking Christianity and religious belief in general, and was a hero on the left for doing so. But now Dawkins himself is becoming persona non grata on the left. Recently, a Berkeley, California radio station canceled a live event with Dawkins after the public complained about Dawkins' criticism of Islam. Richard Dawkins has a new book coming out tomorrow titled Science and the Soul, Selected Writings of a Passionate Rationalist. And he joins us now. Professor, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm fine, thank you.
So tell me what happened here. This is wild. I mean, I've watched your old debates with Dinesh D'Souza online. I mean, you guys have great audiences, great participation. But you've been doing this atheist deal globally for years and years and years, and you have a huge following. But then you come against all the tolerant ones at Berkeley. What happened?
Well, when you say the public complained, I think about one person might have complained. If you actually look at the website of that radio station, their own website, I think it's running something like 97% condemnation of them. And 4% condemnation of me. You're absolutely right. I'm an equal opportunity religion basher. I've been criticizing all religion, mostly Christianity, for years. But you can do that as much as you like with the regressive left. As soon as you criticize any aspect of Islam, they come down on you like a ton of bricks. Why they have this double standard is a big mystery.
Now, why do you think that is, given the fact that today we see the most horrific violence being committed against all religious minorities, all minorities, period, obviously gay people, by ISIS and other ISIS acolytes, the Taliban. I've never understood that. The wrath of the left really is much more directed toward Christian conservatives, I guess. They think they're the bigger threats than people who are actually cutting people's heads off. That was a head-turner to keep in this metaphor.
I don't know why this is. I mean, I don't think it's that they're frightened of getting their heads off if they let me on. I think more probably they mistakenly think that Islam is a race, and therefore they think that anybody who criticizes Islam must in some sense be racist. I mean, it's bizarre, but I believe that must be at least a sort of subconscious motive.
But what does that mean about all your readers, though? Most of them come from the left. I mean, if they actually, if so many of these people think Islam is a race, I mean, that's a lowbrow beyond lowbrow, isn't it?
I regard myself as on the left, and I think it's an extremely unpleasant new phenomenon. It's now called the regressive left. It's only a minority of the left, but it's a very unpleasant and very unfortunate one.
What do you think about just free speech in general today? College campuses expanding the conversation. We saw what happened even at Middlebury College in Vermont, not far from where I went to school. Berkeley, obviously, with the riots. There seems to be very little place for real exchange, robust exchange of ideas. I mean, that's what college is supposed to be about, isn't it? Like exchanging ideas and...
A university is the place where exchange of ideas should take place, free speech should take place. It's tragic, especially that Berkeley, of all places, the home of the free speech movement in 1963, should now be suppressing free speech in this way.
Richard, do you get upset when people say, "I'll pray for you"? Does that bug you?
Oh, I take it as it's rather fun. I don't mind that at all.
Have you ever prayed?
Well, when I was a child, as St. Paul said, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I thought of a child, I understood as a child, but when I became a man...
I got it.
Okay. I put away childish things.
I got it. Richard, we really appreciate it. And of course I'm going to pray for you. And it's great to have you on. And after
This clip exposes the double standard. Dawkins spent years attacking Christianity, and many people applauded him. But the moment he criticized Islam, suddenly criticism became hate. That is dishonest. Islam is not a race. It is a belief system, and belief systems must be open to attack, debate, and rejection. If Christianity can be mocked, questioned, and challenged, Islam gets no special shield. Free speech means bad ideas can be called bad ideas. Religion does not deserve protection from criticism. People deserve rights. Ideas do not.
I care about what's true. I mean, do you actually believe in your Muslim faith? Do you believe that Muhammad split the moon in two? Do you believe that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example? I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe in revelation. I mean, the point here is that let's assume I'm wrong, Richard. I'm wrong.
Let's
assume I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm happy to concede that, Richard. I'm happy to concede it. I'm wrong. All religions are wrong. God does not exist. We're all mad. The issue is we exist. We've existed for a while. I think even Christopher Hitchens said, and you've said in your writings, we're not going anywhere. So my question to you is, why not acknowledge, for example, the good things that religion has done? Do you accept that religion has done good things, despite all of our mad beliefs and our miracles?
I accept that individual religious people have done an enormous number of good things.
Not driven by religion?
Well, I mean, who knows?
You're very mean-spirited. You won't give any credit at all.
Take somebody like Martin Luther King, for example.
Reverend Martin Luther King.
Yes. Obviously, he was a cleric. I imagine that fed into the good things that he did. Plenty of other things did. He was a great admirer of Gandhi, and he was a great admirer of non-violence. He was a brilliant and wonderful, great man.
Would you disconnect MLK's non-violence and Gandhi's non-violence from their very strongly held religious beliefs? They didn't.
Well, I think it's not a thing that I really care about, actually. I mean, I think they were...
You do care about it, Richard. You're saying that people carry out violence in the name of God, and I cite to you an example of very famous people who have done good and non-violence in the name of God, and you say, I'm not interested.
If God doesn't exist, then doing something good in his name it's great that something good gets done, but there's no evidence at all that believing in God makes you more likely to do good things. I can't see any noble, logical connection between being religious and doing good things.
Let's concede that God does not exist. let's concede that religion is false. My problem here is trying to understand why some of the new atheists are so anti-religion when religious people clearly are doing lots of good things and they're doing it in the name of God.
I've never denied that religious people are doing good things and non-religious people are doing good things. I care about what's true. I'm an educator, I'm a scientist, and I want people to understand the truth about the universe in which they live. That's what I care about. And I regard religion as a distraction, and in some cases a pernicious distraction from true education, which I love and value the way you value and love your God.
Can you not do both?
Well, so long as they don't contradict
each other.
Richard. As long as they don't contradict each other. But if you actually believe Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, that's an anti-scientific belief.
And that could be wrong.
But that very well is wrong.
But that doesn't change. That doesn't change. How do you know it's wrong?
Oh, come on. You're a man of the 21st century.
No, I'm just asking. It comes back to my original question. The rational position is the agnostic. The rational position is the agnostic position.
Why up there?
The rational position. I didn't say up there. I didn't pick a place.
Okay,
you picked a place.
Why would a winged horse be the way to get to heaven if it's not up there?
I asked a question about. You asked about proof. I'm all for saying I can't prove it, but can you prove he didn't do it? I mean, this is the end-old debate.
He didn't fly to heaven on a winged horse?
I'm just asking on your criteria. I'm just asking on your criteria.
No, I can't prove it, and I can't prove it wasn't a golden unicorn.
But I'm fascinated that you're rather talk about what animals the Prophet may or may not have used 1400 years ago, rather than talk about what Muslims or Islam is doing in the world today, good or bad.
Well,
that seems to be the distraction. If anyone's distracted, it seems to be you.
Well, that's your view. I'm fascinated by how somebody, a respected, sophisticated journalist in the 21st century, can believe that a prophet flew to heaven on a winged horse.
Let me ask you this. Are all people who hold beliefs in God and in miracles and the supernatural, do you regard them all as intellectually inferior to you?
I regard those beliefs as intellectual nonsense. I don't regard the individuals as intellectually inferior to me, because many of them palpably are not. If you go back in history, then all bets are off, because before Darwin, for example, it is not at all surprising that before Darwin people believed in all kinds of things which they wouldn't believe in now. There are many people, many scientists today who say they're religious. And if you actually ask them what they believe, in many cases it turns out what they believe is in some sort of deistic God, some sort of intellectual spirit, some sort of creative intelligence that lay at the root of the universe, perhaps invented the laws of physics, something like that.
Moon in 2. Those claims come straight from Islamic texts. Surah 54:1 talks about the moon splitting, and hadith collections describe the night journey on Al-Buraq. But there is zero scientific or historical evidence that any of that actually happened. No records from other civilizations, no physical trace, nothing. And this is the key problem. In science, if you make a big claim, you have to prove it. In religion, the burden gets flipped. They say, well, you can't prove it didn't happen. That's not how truth works. You can say the same thing about dragons or unicorns.
And these are what some Muslims do in response to that. That's not a lie, that's just a statement of fact.
The most important social freedoms and advances have been brought about by people who cause... The most important social freedoms and advances have been brought about by people who caused great offence in their time. Galileo, Charles Darwin, they caused offence to the church because they spoke out against the church orthodoxy. The first people who spoke out against slavery caused great offence. Those who denounced the church and the way the church supported slavery, they were denounced and condemned for causing offence.
Anything I could say that would offend you?
Well, there may be plenty of things you can say, but you have the right to say them, providing you don't incite violence against other human beings.
But how do we not legislate is the wrong word, but how do we make sure that people don't cross that line? Because it's a very grey area, isn't it? Miriam, you wanted to come back in.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, there are certainly things that are offensive, but do we need to offend people by saying them? I mean, there's a way of saying things. We can discuss the institution of the monarchy in this country without insulting the Queen. It therefore makes it perfectly reasonable and possible to discuss, I think, the tenets and beliefs of any other religion without insulting sensibilities.
Insulting sensibilities, that's interesting. Without insulting sensibilities. Okay, some Muslims think that music and dancing are haram and should be forgiven, not forgiven, wrong word, Freudian slip. forbidden, haram, that it's forbidden. So if I were to say, music, forbidden, haram, that is just bonkers. Now, some people are going to find that extremely offensive, aren't they? Have I offended sensibilities? Do I have the right to say that?
I think that I think if people that are used to having debates within the interfaith debates are pretty familiar with the codes and practices of different religions and understand where those boundaries lie. And certainly that would not be one of those boundaries. But there are certain things that even people with no religion would find offensive. If I was to come on TV and start insulting, you know, I mean, I hate to be crass, but your mother, that would be extremely offensive. Now, we feel as strongly about our mothers as we do about the Prophet Muhammad. That doesn't mean you can't discuss what he says, the message he brings.
People in this country put up with being offended. Walking down a street, you get offended. There's somebody wearing something you don't like, or you get offended. It's part of being grown up. It's just accepting the fact that you get your feelings trodden upon. Does it mean you have to deliberately tread on people's feelings? No, not necessarily.
Exactly.
But what you cannot do is to ring-fence one ideology through fear, intimidation, or anything else. And that is what we see happening. That's what Ben Ellsworth is saying.
Richard Dawkins, Professor, you've obviously, I mean, a lot of people have taken offence at some of the things that you've written. You know, they feel personally offended because they feel that their faith, which is so dear to them, and their belief, which they cherish, has, you know, you're criticising it. Do you think about that?
I don't go out of my way to offend.
No, but do you think about the possible consequences?
If people are offended, then they may argue against me. All I use is words. There's a radical distinction between using words and violence, and incitement to violence. The Salman Rushdie affair brings this out. Salman Rushdie simply wrote a book. That's what he did. He wrote a book. He was threatened with death. He was threatened with death by baying crowds in this country. People burned his books. They demanded the death penalty.
And some leading parliamentarians suggested that the paperback shouldn't come out.
Some leading parliamentarians, some leading clergymen, some leading bishops sided with the Ayatollah Khomeini rather than sided with this very distinguished novelist who did no more than put words on paper. That is a radical distinction.
Can I let Miriam come back in and see me discuss this with you,
I do sort of feel like we're talking about issues in a vacuum here. I mean, you're talking about the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. Are we forgetting that we're talking about Khomeini? Are we forgetting that we're talking about the 1979 revolution and the context in which that was occurring? And similarly, when we talk about, you know, the reaction, the highly unacceptable, violent reaction of some Muslims, I would like to add, to films like Geert Wilders' films and Van Gogh's film, etc. You know, we're almost talking like it's completely decontextualised. It's not happening in a vacuum.
Okay.
Muslims around the world feel victimised.
You're completely wrong. One of the people who supported the fatwa against Salman Rushdie was now Sir Iqbal Sakrani, a leader of the Muslim Council of Britain. He got a knighthood after saying that death was too good for Salman Rushdie. And he's a leader. He was a leader of the Muslim Council of Britain.
A.L. Kennedy, do you think that anything goes?
Yeah, I think we need freedom of speech. What alarms me more than anything is that freedom of speech is being constantly redefined as the right to offend, and it's only the negative aspects that were being shown. And that leads to absurdities like the photographs from the torture at Abu Ghraib are redefined in terms of these photographs are offensive and are causing unrest. And you don't get the dialogue which is about it's offensive to torture people, that causes unrest, and photographs of torture. And you have this absurd situation where the more true something is, and we are quite often talking about questions of belief and questions of factual, provable truth. The more true something is, the more offensive it will be. So, for example, you can't, or you would want to watch putting an article into a newspaper about a corporation because it would offend the corporation. And if it's true, you would want to be even more careful because it would impact even more on the share price. So this whole kind of right to offend seems to prevent truth from appearing now.
And what was so interesting in our earlier debate was we had a Christian evangelical who was, we have to admit, pretty offensive if you were gay, and yet Richard didn't think that that was allowed. So we are not allowed, you know, we are allowed to have Muslims feel offended, but not Christians.
I didn't say she shouldn't speak.
Richard, you said that she was
Christina, allow Richard to come back.
Offensive.
I didn't say she shouldn't speak. Of course she's free to speak. I simply said that her personal opinion is of no interest on a factual matter where there is evidence.
Richard, what do you think
can always have always have a difference of opinion, and when there is a difference of opinion, you're pro-homosexuality, she's anti-homosexuality, so be it, you put those opinions out in the arena. Where it gets downright offensive, when you're going to offend millions of people who died in the Holocaust by saying it never happened, that's fundamentally wrong.
But Sir Rabbi, should David Irving not have been, should David Irving not be allowed to talk?
Bishop Tom, let's go on to this. As a final thought, Bishop Tom, cartoons, for example, can I just take you to a specific point? There have been cartoons of, you know, God, a white man on a cloud, in our culture and civilization for eons. You know, it's not something we get concerned about. Why should we make special rules for other people?
But there are different cultures. I mean, what was it, 10 years, 15 years ago, Spitting Image portrayed Jesus Christ as a hippie. We weren't terribly pleased about it, but we live with that culture. The Muslim community in this country said, he's one of our prophets. You don't denigrate our prophet.
The Life of Brian was a similar kerfuffle, wasn't it?
Now, actually, that was a very interesting kind of meeting of different cultures, different habits. And if we're going to share one country, and if we're going to have social cohesion, we've got to respect one another and think before we act.
Britain is one of the most...
I have not got the freedom here now to shout fire, because if I do... A lot of people
will get fired. You would. You do have the right. If it's on fire, you should shout fire.
Yes, but if it's not on fire, you don't shout fire. There's a limit to fire.
So we have to watch our P's and Q's.
We have to watch about shouting fire in the public arena if that is going to damage our social cohesion.
Britain is one of the most multicultural, multi-faith countries in the world, and it's just not possible to carry on in a way you don't offend anyone. The answer is we don't have the right not to be offended, any of us.
Thank you all very much indeed.
The moment you question Islam or any religion, the response is not evidence, it's offense. But offense is not an argument. History shows the opposite. Progress always comes from challenging beliefs. Galileo challenged the church. Darwin challenged creation stories. People who fought slavery challenged religious justifications for it. Truth moves forward by breaking old ideas, not protecting them. And here's the line: words are not violence. Writing a book, drawing a cartoon, or criticizing a prophet is not harm. But religion has a track record of responding with threats, intimidation, and sometimes real violence. The Salman Rushdie case proved that clearly. If an idea cannot handle criticism without people reacting with fear or force, that idea is weak.
Turn to politics instead. The Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Dr. Deepu Moni, studied medicine and public health in her own country, the UK and the US, but politics was in her blood. Dr. Moni's father was a politician in Bangladesh, and that, of course, was formed from what was then East Pakistan in 1971. She's one of the best-known women leaders in South Asia. Dr. Deepu Moni, welcome to Rendezvous. And your country is now 40 years old, so congratulations.
Thank you.
It's kind of reached middle age. Something I think that we all have in common here. And your fellow guest, Richard Dawkins.
Hello.
So, Deepu Moni, I mean, obviously you studied medicine. You're sort of a person, a woman of science. But do you find any inherent contradiction in that and also being a practicing Muslim?
I haven't found any conflict in being a person of science. I studied medicine, public health and law, but I don't see any conflicts between all these subjects and my religion. And I think my faith is my personal thing, and I'm comfortable with it. And my religion also asks me to ask questions, to understand the world, the universe, and in my very limited way, I try to do that. And so far, I haven't found any conflict, and I'm happy with it.
But you know, Bangladesh, obviously, almost predominantly Muslim country. A lot of people use how women are treated in Muslim countries as a kind of barometer of how advanced a nation is. And what would you say to people when they look at Bangladesh and you see that you are a woman and foreign minister, Sheikh Hasina, the prime minister, is a woman, the leader of the opposition, Khalida Zia, is a woman, and then in Pakistan you obviously had the late Benazir Bhutto and so on. What is it about South Asia that allows women to assume these political roles, and yet when you look at the population at large, women do really still suffer a great deal of discrimination?
Well, if I talk about Bangladesh, in Bangladesh there are problems with women suffering, but it's not more than anywhere else in the world. But what we have is, because of the culture that I talked about, women are seen, whether it's within the domestic area or in the social areas or within the state, women are not seen as, mostly not seen as second-class citizens. Women have a lot of opportunities, but we do have problems. We are, like anywhere else, we are trying to address those. But culturally, I think, because in Buddhism they say that men are carriers of knowledge, but women are carriers of wisdom. And in Hinduism, all the great goddesses, I mean, they are. And in Islam...
So there's that mix of...
Yeah, and in Islam, in Prophet's life, women played a great role. And the first person to convert to Islam was a woman. The first martyr
Khadija,
was a
that was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad. But so you see religion as a force for good on the whole?
In our culture, in our country, that has happened. And mothers are very important in our families, decision makers as well.
So Richard, you hear what Deepu is saying there, that religion needn't necessarily be the destructive force that you say.
The whole basis for the partition of the Indian subcontinent into India and the two halves of Pakistan was religion. There was no other reason. I mean, Bangladesh is part of Bengal, and your natural neighbours would be West Bengal. Yet because of religion, you became part of Pakistan. In the partition of the Indian subcontinent purely over religion, there were the most hideous massacres. You couldn't possibly say that religion has been a force for good in the Indian subcontinent. As for the treatment of women, I'm delighted to hear that things are all right in Bangladesh, but they're certainly not in West Pakistan, where women are...
In Pakistan?
In Pakistan, yes. Where the lot of women is truly terrible in many respects.
Well, in Bangladesh also we have problems, but it's not more than anywhere else in the world. I mean, we have problems, women facing problems, women facing violence every day, even in the developed countries. I mean, whenever we talk about women's empowerment on a global level, we talk about Norway. Still, there are so many domestic violence cases in Norway itself. So, I mean, it's a very difficult issue. Yeah. It's at a personal level, at a societal level. So it's.
But we're just okay. I want to.
But when you talked about partition of India, actually, I believe that it's a misnomer. Bengal was partitioned, and Punjab was partitioned.
Well, okay, so we're going to actually stay with the theme of strong women leaders, because Deepu Moni, I know you've just recently visited Burma, but I want to bring in our next guest, because of course the Burmese pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi has very much been in the news these past 12 months, and of course she has said that she's going to be standing for elections in Burma. And there's a new film about her life called The Lady.
This part tries to defend religion by pointing to a few successful women. But that does not prove religion is good. It proves individuals can succeed despite the system around them. Look at the history tied directly to religion. The partition of India, driven by religious identity, led to around 1 million deaths and mass violence. That is not a small side effect. That is a direct consequence of religion dividing people into us and them. And when we talk about women, you cannot just point to a few leaders and ignore the broader reality. In many religious societies, women still face legal and cultural limits that men do not. That pattern is not random. It comes from beliefs written into religious traditions. So no, religion does not get credit because a few people rise above it. The bigger picture shows the damage it creates.
You want to communicate atheism to the world, and we want to have a connection with you as a human being.
I want to communicate truth.
Good.
Do you believe in evolution?
Do I believe in evolution?
Yes.
I believe that I don't have adequate information to even make that judgment.
Well, that's very sensible. Now, let me give you some adequate information.
Oh, please do so.
Okay. The evidence for evolution is absolutely solid. It's as strong as the evidence that the planets orbit. You do believe the planets orbit the sun, do you? Yeah.
Yes, I did science as a bachelor's.
Well, you did science, so why don't you know about evolution?
Because it was psychology, that's why.
Well, psychology ought to include evolution because the human mind, the human brain, is an evolved organ. Okay, the evidence for evolution, although it happened a long time in the past, so you can't actually see it happening, or most of the time you can't. Nevertheless, I use the analogy of a detective coming on the scene of a crime after the crime's been committed. So you can't actually see it happen, but what you see is all the evidence, all the clues, all the fingerprints, all the footprints and everything else. And that adds up massively, more strongly than any court of law.
I agree with this,
yeah.
But the only contention some religious philosophers have, for example, not all religious people don't like science. Many religious people like science. For example, a lot of the scientists were revived from the Islamic history, as you know. The question that they would have is, evolution is a non-complementary paradigm with what's happening in cosmology, for example. For example, if you look at physics and the constants, some people say there'll be a fine-tuning here. There's some
Wait, what do you mean by non-complementary paradigm?
Because,
what do you mean?
For example, I think you answered that question well in your book, page 157, 158, when you said we don't have an answer for physics like we do as in evolution. So the question you posed was, who designed the designer?
Yeah.
And I think what some Islamic philosophers contemporary would say, that's an interesting question, but even in the philosophy of science, and I think downstairs you wanted to ignore that question about the philosophy of science, the best explanation doesn't require an explanation. And to have an added infinite regress of explanations undermines the very fact that we need an explanation. So the design argument is more plausible than the chance with regards to the fine-tuning of the universe, which has nothing to do with evolution. That's
no, it's
way
nothing to do with it. It's a question of physics.
Yeah.
But how can it possibly be helpful to explain the origin of the universe, to postulate something complicated like a god? Why don't you say it's something like a spontaneous quantum fluctuation, something like that, which is simple?
Richard, that's a very good point.
Which is simple.
That's a very good point. But haven't you assumed that God is complicated and made of many parts?
Well, God's got to be complicated, hasn't he? Otherwise, because he couldn't forgive your sins and listen to your prayers.
No, but you're misconstruing physicality for like an entity with ability. Someone may be able to do complex things. Doesn't make his nature complex, though, surely. Because I think you're superposing.
What are you talking about?
Okay, do you want me to clarify?
If God is capable of listening to prayers, forgiving sins, knowing when you've done wrong and punishing you for it, how could he possibly be anything other than complex?
So are you saying that the design argument is not plausible because it creates more questions than it answers? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, but don't you think then a bloated multiverse or multi-universe is far more complex?
No, I don't actually. A bloated multiverse. It has
no rational force, does it?
A bloated multiverse is actually rather simple. It's just very wasteful. It's very uneconomical.
But that doesn't go in line with Occam's razor, though. Do not multiply.
Yes, it does. Right. It does really. No, it does rather.
How does it do that?
It's not. For a start, it's not beyond necessity. If it actually helps to explain something, it's not very complicated. It's just saying there are lots and lots and lots of universes.
Well, you're saying there's an infinite amount of universes.
Well, I'm not saying that, but
that's the theory.
Some physicists do. I'm not necessarily.
Designed by an intelligent creator, omnipotent creator being. Can you just run me past why, if we're all designed, most religious people, first thing they do is chop off half of the genitalia?
I gotta go.
Take care, Richard. Thank you very much.
Evolution is not a guess. It is backed by fossils, DNA, and observable changes in species. Scientists across the world agree on it the same way they agree the Earth orbits the Sun. That is evidence-based truth. Religion answers with design, and God did it. But that creates a bigger problem. If everything needs a creator, then who created God? You don't solve a mystery by adding a bigger mystery. And look at the difference in thinking. Science builds explanations from evidence and keeps testing them. Religion jumps to a conclusion and stops questioning. That is why one moves knowledge forward, and the other keeps people stuck defending ideas that don't hold up.
I'm told by my American friends that when you move to a new town in America and you go to a party, absolutely the first question you're asked is, what church do you go to? You can't imagine that happening here. So there is a difference. There is a sense in which perhaps our efforts need to be concentrated in America rather than Britain. But actually on the world stage, it seems to me that our efforts need to be concentrated in the Middle East, in places where religion is more than just a sort of cultural battle, but actually is a physical, violent battle where people are actually being killed. because of futile and footling distinctions between one religion and another.
I mean, do you have a view on what sort of action one can take? We've heard from some very brave campaigners in some of these countries, but when you look at the scale of it and you look at how entrenched religious establishments are in running countries, reasonably, what are the first steps towards that?
It's a very difficult thing. You're talking about the Islamic world now.
Yes, particularly countries, I mean, like Saudi Arabia, which are allies of Britain. I mean, so much of the Middle East. Even if you didn't have the current crisis with ISIS, and I wonder what your view is, someone with a position of such authority in the world of humanism, about how some of the people in this room could think about trying to help bring about change.
I derive some comfort from talking to people in this room who come from this area, who tell me, and I hear it again and again, that the number of people who are dissenting from the predominant religion of that region is much greater than any of us on the whole realize. And that there is an underground movement, there is an undercurrent going on, and it could be one of those cases where there might be a critical mass, where enough of such people come out that it ceases to be dangerous to do so.
Well, tell me about coming out, because this is a big part of your campaigning, but it doesn't feel like it's practical in so many of these countries yet, when you look at the level of authoritarian crackdown on any form of dissent.
That's right, and that's why I use the phrase critical mass, because there does come a point when enough people dissent from the ruling majority that the ruling majority no longer exercises the power that it at present does. If everybody believes that they're the only one who is an unbeliever, then they're afraid to mention it. But if there were some way in which they could secretly know that there are lots and lots of other people. I mean, I get this in a small way when I going back to the United States now. When I go on a lecture tour, I tend to concentrate wherever possible on the so-called Bible Belt. I tend to go to the Deep South, and what I find there is that, contrary to what many people expect, I get my most enthusiastic receptions in the Bible Belt. And just a second thought immediately tells you why. The sort of people who come to my lectures and the lectures of people like Christopher Hitchens are beleaguered. They feel threatened by the society in which they live. And so when somebody like me goes there, I will fill a hall with 2,000, 3,000 people. And the point is, for me, is not what I can tell them. The point for me is that they see each other in a great big hall, and they realize, I'm not alone after all. I thought I was. So I see myself as a lightning rod to bring people together and recognize their existence. And I'm hoping that, of course, in America, they're not actually physically endangering themselves by doing so. But there could be something similar in the Islamic world. Perhaps the internet could be a major force for informing and then empowering people, because it's relatively hard for an authoritarian government to police the internet. I mean, they try, and to some extent they succeed. But I think that it's going to get harder and harder to do that, and so it's possible that the internet may be one of our biggest weapons. Okay. I would like to abolish faith schools, in the sense of schools that are run by particular churches, particular denominations, which indoctrinate children in a particular religion, which are remarkably effective. I mean, the reason why there's so much bloodshed and violence in the Middle East is precisely because young children have been indoctrinated from the cradle upwards. And they've been sent to madrasas, they've been taught nonsense, and they've been told this is holy writ. They've been told that you've got to believe this, and people really do believe it. As Sam Harris said, the thing to understand when you're talking about people like suicide bombers, these people really believe what they say they believe. And the reason they really believe what they say they believe is that they were told it as children at a vulnerable age. And the evidence that they do really believe it seems to me undeniable. The other big thing I have about children, and I've become almost a bore about this, is labelling of children. It's another aspect of the same thing, but indoctrination goes with the tying a label around a child and saying this is a Catholic child, this is a Protestant child, this is a Muslim child. And what really pisses me off about this is that it isn't only done by the religious. We all do it. It's part of our culture to label a child. We see in the newspapers in Northern Ireland Catholic children on their way to school being stoned by Protestants, or Protestant children on their way to school being stoned. The newspapers, which are not run by religion, it's not religious propaganda, it's simply accepted that there is such a thing as a Catholic child. No, there isn't. There's a child of Catholic parents. Don't ever talk about a Catholic child, a Protestant child, a Muslim child.
Religion is not just belief. It is control from childhood. Kids are labeled before they can even think. Muslim child, Christian child, like they were born with a belief system. That is not education. That is programming. And when you look at parts of the Islamic world, this is not harmless. People are punished, silenced, even killed for stepping outside that system. That kind of control does not come from truth. It comes from fear. What Dawkins points out is simple. There are millions of people who don't believe, but they stay quiet because the cost of speaking is too high. That tells you everything. If your system needs fear to survive, it cannot be true. So here's the real question for you. Should any belief system be protected from criticism, or should every idea be open to challenge no matter who it offends? And more importantly, do you think religion helps people find truth, or keeps people from questioning it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me for more.